Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Spartacus, and today I am very excited because we are going to be disproving the Pixar theory. Now, the Pixar theory is actually something that I really respect, something that I really like to think about and to theorize, but at the same time, I do think it would also be fun to just nitpick the tiny parts of it that don't make sense. Now, with all that said, that this video is not meant to, per se, ruin the fun, I could say, of other people making this theory. So, if you love this theory and you want to keep believing this theory, I'd say click off of this video because this video could ruin the whole thing for you every time that you hear it from now on. But with all that said, let's start. So let's start with what is the Pixar theory. Now, if you clicked on this video, I almost guarantee that you know what it is. But just in case you didn't know, it's basically the theory that all of the Pixar movies exist in the same universe. And they're all in a certain timeline. And there's one event from one movie that goes on to the next one, and they all affect other movies. And it starts with The Good Dinosaur, when the asteroid doesn't hit Earth, and that's why the Pixar world is just so slightly different from ours. So, with that said, let's start with The Good Dinosaur. I'm going to be going through all of the movies and explaining what is wrong with that certain movie. And right here in the picture that I have pulled up, you can see they have a silo. They made this farm, and the point is, dinosaurs, since they didn't go extinct, they've had a long time to evolve and to develop. And so they are basically as smart as humans are now in our world. And so they started agriculture, they made inventions, and that's what we see here. And that's the whole theory. But the problem I have with this part of the theory is that you look at Spot and the other cavemen, and they're not as developed as the dinosaurs. Now, obviously, you could say that, dinosaurs were here longer, that's why they're more developed. But we don't necessarily know that that's true. And even if it is true, I still think, I have to think, that in a movie about prehistoric times, that I think that the people who made Good Dinosaurs, as political as Pixar is getting, would make it so that, there's evolution involved. And so I think that Spot in here would be a fully evolved human if you look at the science behind it. I personally don't believe in evolution, but if you look at the science behind what most prehistoric movies use, I should think that Spot would be fully evolved, not as much as the dinosaurs would be, but still he shouldn't be acting like a dog in the movie that it is. Now, obviously, it's a movie, it's a cartoon. I understand that. But my point isn't to say, oh, the movie was wrong. My point is to say that it's just a standalone movie that doesn't tie into the rest of the universe. So, next, let's look at the movie Brave. And there is a lot of magic in this movie. Obviously, it's the first Pixar fairy tale. And you see magic with the wisps right there. And there's magic with the witch, which we are going to be getting into later. But the thing is, there is very few magic in any other Pixar movie. You don't see it in Good Dinosaur. You don't see it in Toy Story, which we're going to be talking about later. It's more of science in Toy Story. You don't see magic in Up, Inside Out, Finding Nemo. So that's the problem I have with this. How could it be the same world if there's magic? Next, I have Incredibles and Luca, and I'm going to talk about these at the same time just because there are very simple arguments for this, as opposed to the more difficult ones that we're going to get into later and the ones that we went through with Good Dinosaur and Brave. And the arguments are really just, why are there no supers that we see in Toy Story, or in Monsters, Inc., or Finding Nemo, or Up? Why are there no supers? And so that's the problem I have with Monsters, Inc. And then with Luca, how come in Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, we never see the fish monsters that are Luca? So that's what I'm thinking. Like, if Nemo was to go across the entire ocean, I feel like he would at some point see one of these fish monsters, and he didn't. With all that said, let's go on to Toy Story, where we see science, or specifically B&L, by and large, interacting with the Pixarverse for the first time. Now, we see by and large batteries right here in Buzz's case or suit, whatever you want to call it. And it's basically the theory behind this is that the batteries charge toys from human emotions that connect with their toys. And so basically, when Andy believes Buzz is real through his imagination, then Buzz becomes real. And basically, by and large, made this for like every single toy. And there was like an apocalypse, you could say, of by and large, when they go to all these toys. Now, my question is, why did they choose toys? Obviously, there are so many toys in the world. How come they chose those toys, and how do they get into dolls? Like in Bonnie's bedroom, how do they get into dolls? Or like Woody, he doesn't have batteries. And so, how do they control the toys to come to life from there? Next, I've got a long string of movies that I just couldn't find an argument for, and that they're so simply put into the Pixar theory that it just doesn't make sense. It's mostly imaginative, and so I couldn't really find an argument with those, so let's move on. The next one is from Toy Story 4, and my argument for this one is, like I said earlier in Toy Story, by and large, made toys to connect with the humans and to feel the same emotions the humans do. But if the toys are always supposed to go back to the humans, if they're always supposed to be there for their humans, why did Woody leave? Obviously, we know Bonnie doesn't play with him anymore, and he wanted to go with Bo, but even if Bonnie doesn't want to play with him anymore, that didn't stop him in Toy Story 3, he didn't leave Andy. And so I don't really understand why Woody left if by and large made it so that all the toys were always supposed to go back to their owner. Next, from Soul and Coco, this argument is very simple. They have different afterlives. Now you could say it's different because of the region that they're in, but if you look at an afterlife, it's a supernatural thing that covers an entire universe, an entire world. And so if Soul takes place just in America and Coco in Mexico, that's countries are very close together, in fact touching. So even if it was for a region, I feel like it would still cover both of those one single afterlife, but they have different afterlives. And that's just my main argument for this one. Next, from Cars. This one is a little bit tricky. You have to really be looking out, because when Sally and Lightning McQueen are on a drive in Radiator Springs, they see bugs as cars. Now, to connect Cars into the Pixar theory through this one is that basically, like how the toys would have the personalities of their owners, by and large made it so that the cars would have personalities of their previous owners. And these owners went on the Axion in WALL-E, and that's why we don't see any people. And that's why there are full cities, that's why there are jobs and careers, because when people loved their car so much, then that car took on their personality after all the people left. So my question is, how are there bug cars? I don't remember any bugs in A Bug's Life driving cars. And now, obviously, it's called a bug, that's what the type of car. But at the same time, you don't see race cars as horses, right? So there are specifically bugs. And the same thing could be said about the tractors. How are they cows if cows couldn't drive before the Axion left? So it's a simple argument, but complicated to think about. The next one is from WALL-E and Onward Connected, and basically the theory is that there were multiple Axions. One landed on Earth at the end of the movie WALL-E, and one landed in the world that is the world of Onward. And so the theory is that because there are two moons, that it's a different world, and that's why there's magic on this one and not on other worlds. But the main argument is that this mountain here in Onward looks like the Axion. Personally, I don't see it. I tried fitting this all kinds of different ways. I tried fitting it, obviously, this stem here and this one over here match, and I guess that could match. But other than that, there's like no other ways that this fits. There's just this piece hanging loose over here with nothing to do, not part of the mountain. And so it doesn't really fit the mountain. So I think that's a very loose argument. Alright, next one from Monsters Inc. This is going to be a lot. Okay, so basically the theory is that Boo time traveled, became the witch that was trying to remember Sully for all of eternity so that he would never suffer the final death that we see in Coco. And so basically the problem I have with this is that through the Pixar theory, the monsters scare kids in through a time traveling door, basically. And the door goes back to the time when Incredibles was, where there was a lot of fear because there was a lot of crime. And basically, this is way so far in the future because people who landed on Earth from the Axion evolved into monsters over time. Now, the problem I have is part of the theory is that the monster world and the human world are parallel, like connected, that they're always happening at the same time. So if the 50s was happening in the human world, then some other time would be happening in the monster world. So it would just be some random time. That's just a made up number. It doesn't mean anything. But basically, it's always parallel. And if the 40s were happening, then a later time would be happening in the monster world. Now, here's my thinking. If Boo were to time travel, say she came back to the monster world and she was able to, get through the door, get to another time, that door would still lead her right back to the 50s. So how was she able to go all the way back to the time of Brave, all the way over here, if she could only get to the 50s? Because in the monster world and the world they're time traveling to, it's completely parallel. So it doesn't make much sense. And say she did find a way to time travel, it's a movie, so obviously she can find a way. But then you get to the all the Pixar worlds, and you start to see, well, if Boo came back to the world with Brave in it, but she couldn't be there until she time traveled all the way from the future to Brave, then the events of Brave never happened. And the events of The Incredibles never happened. And all of the events of any Pixar movie never happened. And so that's my problem with this, that it doesn't work because Boo could not come to the 1300s until this part happened where she meets Sully and tries to get back to him. And so she couldn't go back to the 1300s and become the witch that Merida sees. And because there was no witch there at that time, before Boo was even born in the Incredibles time, then how did the events of Brave happen? And because the events of Brave introduced magic into the world, then Incredibles didn't happen. And all of these different movies never happened. And so there you go. That is my full dilemma with the Pixar theory. I hope that I did well to disprove it. Let me know in the comments if you have any arguments against mine. All of this to say it was not meant to discredit the creators of the Pixar theory or to ruin anybody's fun, but this was just fun for me to nitpick all the tiny ideas of it. Thanks for watching. See you later.